Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today we'll be discussing Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 4, text 23. Gata sangasya muktasya gnanavastita chetasaha yagnaya charataha karma samagram praviliyate. So Krishna says, a person who is gata sangasya, sangha means attachment to the material modes, gunas. So one who is gata sangasya means he's gone away from it. Gata means gone. Or one who is unattached to this sangha, these modes, and thereby who is become a muktasya, liberated, by dint of his gnana avasthita chetasaha. Gnana avasthita means situated in transcendence or transcendental knowledge. Chetasaha, such wisdom. Gnana avasthita chetasaha. Yagnaya acharataha karma. Such a person performs activities, karma, for the sake of yagna. Yagnaya acharataha karma. Yagna means the other name of Lord Vishnu is also Yagna or Krishna. So Yagnaya acharataha karma, that person, he does his work completely for the sake of Yagna, and samagram praviliyate. For such a person, for such a work, there is no reaction. So Prabhupada translates this beautifully. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. So Prabhupada says in the purport, becoming fully Krishna conscious, one is freed from all dualities and thus is free from the contaminations of the material modes. So every moment we are bound by these material modes. This is contamination. There was one story real incident. I was quite intrigued. One devotee was saying, so there was this man who had a problem. He went to the doctor, it was not going away. Something in the lungs or something. And he tried all kinds of medication, it was not going away. So finally they did an X-ray and found that there was some object or something wrong in his lungs. And they couldn't do anything about it. And they punted it to a bigger hospital, bigger doctor. And they looked at this X-ray or whatever result that was sent. And they did a big procedure. And the family members prayed like anything. And finally they completed the procedure and the doctor came out and said, I'm sorry to report, we couldn't take out that object. And then they were shocked. And the doctor said, I couldn't even find that object. And then later they figured out that that X-ray was mistaken because the X-ray device itself had a mistake, some kind of a spot by which it is reporting that there is a problem in the actual organs of the body, whereas the actual lens or whatever it is had that mistake. Like I was trying to give kids some exercise on my screen. So I had this paint, this Adobe programs where you can paint and give a different color to different objects. So I had one object which had a black spot in between. Not black spot, some kind of a blemish. And I wanted them to pick one color and remove that blemish. So a couple of kids came and tried, and whatever they were applying the paint on that particular portion, still that blemish would not go away. And they were scratching their head. And the third kid was very intelligent. He said, actually, that blemish is on the screen of my laptop. Because that it is viewed from my vision, it appears as if it is there on the object. Unless you become little sober and see carefully. So it's like that. We are always contaminated by these modes, and the modes are making us think it's a different object than what it is. What we are seeing is a distorted version of the reality. According to the contamination I have, the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, I'll see the reality according to my own contamination. A person in mode of ignorance, he sees a completely the more distorted version. He sees truth to be completely untruth, and he sees untruth to be truth. One who is contaminated by mode of passion, he sometimes sees truth, sometimes sees untruth. And contaminated by goodness, he sees the truth, but he becomes attached. Because he sees the truth, he can figure out ways of remaining in this world, very knowledgeable, figuring out, and he can become happy. And he can become conditioned to that. So these are all contaminations. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu likens our consciousness to a mirror. So if you are looking at a mirror yourself, but if the mirror is fully foggy or full of dirt, marks, you will appear yourself distorted or not clear, isn't it? Because the mirror itself is not clear. So if we cleanse that mirror, then we can see ourselves clearly. This is called Cheto Darpanamarjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shreyaha Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrutaswadanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So this is the first thing that Sri Krishna Sankirtanam does, is clearing that dust from the mirror of our hearts. Cheto Darpana, our consciousness is considered like it. Darpana means mirror. Marjanam means cleansing. Without cleansing, we identify ourselves as somebody else. Isn't it? I may be looking like somebody, but my identification is something else. The whole problem in this world, the suffering of this world, is because we wrongly identify as somebody who we are not. First, starting with identifying ourselves as our body, whereas we are spirit souls, parts and parcels of Krishna. So we identify ourselves as body. And next, because the body is born in a particular community or a particular family, we identify ourselves as part of that family. And therefore, we identify ourselves as part of that caste. This caste system it's quite predominant in many parts of India. And, the color of the skin. Oh, I identify myself as belonging to this community based on my color of the skin. Or I identify myself to a particular party. And it doesn't matter what they do, I always root for their win. I identify myself to a particular team, a sports team. I identify myself to a particular film star, a fan. I identify myself to a particular country. But the problem is, the moment you identify with something, let's say a party, or your favorite cricket team. You become subject to the happiness and distress because of that identification. Sometimes the team wins, sometimes the team loses. See the duality? Because of your identification, that happiness which doesn't belong to you, you're projecting from that particular identification as your happiness. So I was hearing a conversation in the office. So this person is saying, "Oh, his life is full of enjoyment," and he was explaining how, when India wins the match, I would go to pub to celebrate, and when India loses the match, I would again go to pub to forget that loss. So either way, I'm happy. So this is his reasoning. That means either way, he's drinking and foolishly thinking that that is giving him happiness. So, firstly, identifying oneself as part of something is making us go through these waves of duality, the so called happiness, so called suffering. And to forget that or to celebrate that, we are plunging more into ignorance without understanding the effects of that intoxication. So, you see, it's a layer after layer, layer after layer, we are submerged into this ignorance. This is called Sangasya. Sangha means attachment to these modes. The modes are tossing us around and we are thinking we are free. Oh, I am free. I am nobody. I don't have to submit to anybody. Many times when we go out and distribute books, we meet a lot of people. And people, they find excuse to not take the books. I don't need the books. Oh, this book makes you happy. No, I'm already happy. This books make you stress free. No, I'm already stress free. This book makes you liberated. What is liberation? I'm already happy and I don't have any problem. This is the illusory happiness. When the problem hits, people think, oh, why there is problem? I have to get rid of the problem. But when the problems temporarily go away, we again fall back to illusion. Oh, life is all happiness. So this is the covering, this is the illusory power of this material nature. So Prabhupada says, therefore, in the purport, he can become liberated because the devotee, he can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna. And thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna, who is the primeval Vishnu. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices, because sacrifice involves satisfying the Supreme Person Krishna. So, to overcome this illusion is to come to the understanding that my constitutional position is in relationship with Krishna. This comes with knowledge, gnana avasthita. And thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. And therefore, whatever he does for Krishna. Samagram gnanavastita chetasaha yagnaya acharatah karma. His activities are for the purpose of yagna, to please Krishna. Therefore, they are all considered as sacrifices. So, sacrifice is not just a fire sacrifice. Sacrifice is also our activities. The fire sacrifice is done for what? We are offering grains, we are offering ghee, we are offering all these things so that the fire carries it to the Lord. So it is for the Lord's pleasure. Similarly, any activity we do for the pleasure of the Lord, it is also sacrifice. Our work is the offering to the Lord, just like you are offering food grains to the Lord in sacrifice. Our work itself is an offering to the Lord. And if that work is for the pleasure of Vishnu, it is also a sacrifice. And for that, one needs to be in knowledge. Gnana avastita chetasaha. So, this Krishna consciousness is transcendental knowledge. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says this. Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yogam sikshardhamekah purushah purana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari Krupam Buddhim Tamaham Prapadye. He's offering his respects to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's glorifying, saying, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given this Vairagya Vidya. This Vidya, this is knowledge, transcendental knowledge, which brings up Vairagya, detachment from this material, so called material, illusory happiness and enjoyment. And that Vairagya Vidya is none other than Nija Bhakti Yogam, the Bhakti Yoga, transcendental devotional service performed to Krishna. So, in other words, we don't have to separately cultivate knowledge, nor just by cultivating knowledge we become freed. It has to be accompanied by devotional service to the Lord. अतः श्री कृष्ण नामादि न भवेद ग्राह्यम इंद्रियैः सेवोन्मुखे हि जिह्वादौ स्वयमेव स्फुरत्यदः. Only by seva, sevonmukhe hi jihvadav, starting with jihva, our tongue, which is chanting the holy names of the Lord and honoring prasadam and speaking about the Lord. So by doing this, starting with this seva, everything automatically increases. And by that, swayameva spuratyadaha, Krishna bestows transcendental knowledge. Sometimes the devotees, they come up with different kinds of questions and different kinds of things. Prabhu, we need this particular topic to attract people, or we want to raise the inquisitiveness. The same thing over and over, it becomes boring. So we want to learn this, we want to learn that. See, I tell them, it is just like a child, a kindergarten student, asking, can you teach me calculus? Can you teach me algebra? Can you teach me that? These are all advanced topics. Even, yes, the spiritual master or the teacher is, okay, he will teach you. He will, what is negative numbers? A kindergarten student, he cannot understand what is negative numbers. And if the teacher tells you, how do you subtract 3 apples from 2 apples? And the children go berserk. They won't understand anything. Because there is no such concept for those children. Isn't it? So, unless they go through these lower grades, the kindergarten, the first grade, second grade, and slowly their minds become slowly equipped with dealing with higher realities, higher topics. Then when the teacher tells them, oh yeah, now it makes sense, the negative numbers, the higher mathematics. So we have to make that journey, and that journey is devotional service. That journey is faithful hearing from the spiritual master. Even though at our stage, you hear Srila Prabhupada, he'll say, you are this body. you're not this body, you are spirit soul. Oh, why he is saying this over and over again? Some statements Prabhupada repeats, some verses Prabhupada repeats, in the purports Prabhupada repeats many points. Why it is being said over and over again? Because we are kindergarten students. We have to go through this hearing process and clear up so many misconceptions. And the same statement Prabhupada makes, when you become advanced, you will understand a deeper meaning. The same lecture you hear now and after 5 years, it gives you wealth of understanding, a deeper meaning. Why? Because of your service, Krishna is revealing the transcendental knowledge. The same knowledge if you had read before, you wouldn't have got that wisdom, that realization. But now you're getting the realization because you deserved it by your service. Krishna releases that. So in order to obtain gnana, it's not just mundane accumulation of reading of books or attaining scholarship or researching or hearing different kinds of educated lectures. It is the process. We have to undergo that process of devotional service, faithful hearing and rendering service. And Krishna reciprocates by granting that knowledge. So one might say, oh, if God is merciful, He sees us suffering for lack of self-realization. Why doesn't He grant that? Why doesn't He force that realization upon us? He is God, He can do anything He wants. Why doesn't He drag us back to the spiritual world? So, there was this girl, there was this father who saw this girl outside. And this girl was giving a photo shoot. Young girl, a teenager. And she was giving this photo shoot with scantily dressed clothing and so-called fashion and all that. And the father became livid. He immediately pulled her from that place, dragged her into his car while everybody is watching and recording, taking photographs and all of that. Took her to her home, to his home, and locked her up inside the room and severely chastised her, burnt all her clothing of that nature. And then the daughter became so upset that she left home after that and would never return to her father. So you see here, the father acted out of pure love for his daughter. He forced her to be good. But the daughter had that inclination for enjoying according to her own independence. She didn't like the way of enjoyment prescribed by her father. So she left. So this is really the independence of the jiva. Krishna can easily force us, and he does force for a very special soul. Prabhupada says, or Bhagavatam says rather, Yasyaham anugrihnami harishye tadhanam shanaihi tatodhanam tyajantyasya swajana dukkha dukkitam. Krishna, when he sees that his devotee is getting more and more deep into material things, he takes away all his riches, he gives him so much of unhappiness, he takes away all his relations to the extent that he suffers and suffers like anything. Dukkha dukkitam. So that he will turn to the Lord as his only shelter. That is his extraordinary compassion. But if you see the example I gave, the father forcing and dragging the child went away. And this is really the core of the problem. We are all independent jivas. We have tendency to enjoy separately from the Lord. And even if the Lord were to take us back to the spiritual world, we wouldn't remain there. We would want to come back. That is why the Lord does not force. Because we are independent. We have to show our love in our according to our independent nature, using our free will. It cannot be forced. It cannot be forced. So we have to purify our rebellious nature. That is why the spiritual master, the devotees, becoming so compassionate, slowly and gradually rise the jiva from such rebellious condition to that of a willingly submitting to the Lord and understanding our real position. So that is why it takes time. The Lord does not force. Even though He is willing, He is ready to take us back today. But we don't want to go. We want to stay here. That is the reason. But if the moment we realize that we are rebellious and let me submit and follow the instructions of the spiritual master, that is half job done. And if we stick sincerely to the instructions of the spiritual master and follow the footsteps, it's all about keeping it simple. Just follow the discipline and daily lifestyle given by Srila Prabhupada. Particularly the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. If we can come to the stage of 16 rounds, great. And follow the four regulative principles. Just keep Krishna in the center of our lives. We don't have to give up anything. Just bring Krishna to our midst. And gradually Krishna will take us. The moment you bring Krishna to the center, Krishna will fill our lives and Krishna will take charge. The spiritual master will take charge. We just have to stay true to the instructions and associate with the devotees. That's all. Then we can also become Gata Sangasya Muktasya Gnanavastita Chetasaha and Yagnaya Charataha Karma, all our activities for the pleasure of the Lord, and there won't be any reaction. Samagram Praviliyate. I'll stop here. Anyone has any questions or comments? Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.